Video games are making you violent. Or we've all heard someone say that, and outside of playing League or Call of Duty or Dota, we all know that's not true. Please send your thoughts and prayers to the controllers and keyboards I've destroyed in the past. But joking aside, there is a long-standing history of people blaming video games anytime something bad happens, especially when there are things like school shootings.
We must stop the glorification of violence in our society.
We have to do something about it.
This includes the gruesome and grisly video games that are...
But the reality is that after nearly 2 decades of study, we know that the benefits of gaming heavily outweighs the cons. And then even in the cases where there are downsides, it's nowhere near what critics claim. With now the most recent work on this coming from the Pew Research Center, which surveyed nearly 1,500 teens across the US. And according to them, video games have been a huge boon when it comes to things like problem solving, with 56% saying that gaming improved that aspect of their lives compared to just 3% saying that it made it worse. Then, there were friendships and the ability to work as a team, with 47 and 41% saying that gaming improved those things, with just 4% saying that it made those worse. And I would guess those 4% are in your lobbies running down mid. Yes, I'm making references that only 7% of you are going to get. But also with this, someone could argue, hey, that's just a survey. We need studies. And fortunately, there are actually a ton of those. Because, gaming has now been around for decades. We're getting old. And so we can see not only how it affects kids and teens, but how it has affected adults, right? They've spent a lifetime of gaming. And overall, the conclusion has been that recent research has shown that as video games have become more popular, children in the United States and Europe are having fewer behavior problems, are less violent, and score better on standardized tests. Violent video games have not created the generation of problem youth so often feared, according to Dr. Christopher J. Ferguson of Texas A&M International University. And looking deeper, one study in 2021 looked at how video games affected kids between the ages of 4 and 7. And there, finding that there is a significant positive association between time spent playing recreational video games and selective attention, right? And honing selective attention skills is actually really useful. It's the ability to focus on a single thing and ignore distractions, which is a skill that could arguably be transferred over later in life to study for more effective periods of time, and not just my son not listening to me when I say dinner's ready. But also, this same group also gets massive benefits from gaming in a clinical setting. And I know that may sound weird, but there are games meant to help people manage pain or prevent asthma attacks, and they work shockingly well. Gaming's also been shown to improve brain plasticity, which is a fancy way of saying your ability to change how it responds to learning. And this isn't only good for developing minds, but also for adults where, life can get in the way of stimulating your mind. For some of you, that may sound insignificant, but there is a lot to suggest that constantly learning, that helps build new connections within the brain that in the long term could help hold off things like dementia. Plus, everything we're talking about here, that's just how it affects our minds. Because there are also other physical benefits like fine motor control and coordination that help with career paths. And in fact, as far back as 2007, it was shown in the Archives of Surgery, which is a journal on that subject, that surgeons who game have much better fine motor control. And notably, since then, the need for such skills has just increased, not just because our surgeries have become more fine-tuned and need much better coordination, but also because the tools they use increasingly rely on controllers, like literally a controller. Because often now, the least invasive surgeries don't involve a surgeon sticking his hands into a patient at all, but rather a little machine. Maybe the next time you're going to have to get surgery, you ask, hey, is my surgeon, do they play no build or build? Who do you main in Smash, doctor? Get the fuck out of here. You're only cutting me open if you play
Fox, Pikachu, or Mr. Game & Watch.
My friend was operated on by a surgeon that played
Cory.
He pees through 5 holes now. But also with gaming, some of the careers are a little bit more on the nose. Like how the military is actually shifting to using Xbox controllers for various applications after finding that they were almost ubiquitously understood by recruits. Even non-gamers at least grasp how to use a controller nowadays. So all of this isn't to say that video games are this cure-all for everything. There are definitely drawbacks. But playing a first-person shooter, or any game for that matter, it's not going to make you into a mass murderer as is often claimed. In fact, a 2017 study found that gamers didn't show any signs of being less empathetic than their counterparts. And possibly the only thing that even comes remotely close is that the American Psychological Association found that gaming can cause some aggression, especially in young children playing extremely violent games. And there, it can manifest in some hitting or fighting. Which, to be fair, you can show a young kid just about anything and they will copy it. Which is also something we've seen in movies and TV. It's why, fucking shocker, being a parent matters. Moderating what your very young child sees or does, important. If you don't raise your child, the internet and random strangers will. But then even in that very specific situation of a very young child playing a violent game, it generally doesn't translate to a long-term problem, according to the British journal Royal Society Open Science, with them finding that teens who played violent games didn't exhibit any more aggression than those who didn't play them. And according to Dr. Ferguson, violent video games are like peanut butter. They are harmless for the vast majority of kids, but are harmful to a small minority with pre-existing personality or mental health problems. So they can exacerbate issues in a small group of people, especially when they're children, which again is why across the world, games have a rating system. So these are rare cases where the kids shouldn't even be playing these games to begin with, as it's already been even deemed inappropriate for them. It's also very similar to claiming that watching a horror movie will make a kid into a serial killer. Right? And so really, possibly the worst thing that gaming does is that it can be addictive, something that the World Health Organization has even recognized, which leads to a wider variety of issues. Right? And even in cases where people aren't addicted, as Pew found with their study, it can negatively impact schooling and sleep schedules for a small group of students. So a hot take here, I don't think that it takes a lot to get a teen on a horrible sleep schedule or to ignore their homework. But anyway, that's where I'm going to end with this because I know mostly I'm preaching to the choir a bit here. But hey, consider yourself armed with even more information for the next time your uncle at Thanksgiving starts blaming Call of Duty for a mass shooting.